In 1999, scientists ran an experiment that seemed to prove the future can change the past. They didn't. But what they actually proved is worse. Here's the setup. Fire a photon, a particle of light, at a double slit. It goes through both slits simultaneously, interferes with itself, and creates a wave pattern. Classic quantum weirdness. We've known this for a century. But then the scientists asked a question that shouldn't be possible. What if we could decide after the photon has already been recorded, whether it went through one slit or both? What if we could choose to erase the past? They built an apparatus using entangled photon pairs. One photon, call it the signal, goes to a detector. Its entangled twin, the idler, takes a longer path. The signal photon hits first, gets recorded. Done. Then, nanoseconds later, the idler photon reaches its destination. And here's where time breaks. The idler can go to one of 4 detectors. 2 of them preserve information about which slit the original photon passed through. 2 of them erase that information forever. A choice made after the signal photon is already recorded seems to determine what pattern it created. The future, reaching back to edit the past. Except it doesn't. And understanding why will break your intuitions about reality far more thoroughly than time travel ever could. Let me show you what actually happens. The signal photons hit detector D0. Thousands of them. They build up a pattern. And here's what's crucial. That pattern is always the same. A blob. No interference, no wave pattern, just noise. Wait, if the future eraser creates interference patterns, and the eraser fires after the signal photon is recorded, shouldn't we see the pattern change depending on future choices? No, because the interference only appears when you do something strange. You have to take all those signal photons at D0 and sort them. Every signal photon is entangled with an idler. The idler eventually hits one of 4 detectors. D1 and D2 erase which path information. D3 and D4 preserve it. When you filter the D0 data, looking only at signal photons whose idler went to D1 or D2, those subsets show interference patterns. Beautiful, clean wave patterns. Filter for D3 or D4? No interference. 2 bands. Particle behavior. But here's the thing that should be screaming at you. You can only see these patterns after comparing records from both detectors. The interference was always there, hidden in the noise, invisible until you knew which idler went where. The future choice doesn't change the signal pattern. It changes what you can know about the pattern that was always there. So if it's not time travel, what is it? This is where most explanations stop. They say it's just correlations and move on. But that's cheating you of the actual revelation. The reason this experiment matters isn't that it proves retrocausality. It doesn't. No information travels backward. No paradoxes are possible. The revelation is that the past was never as fixed as you thought. Think about that. We assume the past is definite. It happened, it's done. Every event has a clear answer. The photon went through the left slit at exactly 3:42:17. But quantum mechanics is telling you something different. Before you make certain measurements, some questions about the past don't have answers. Not we don't know the answer. The answer does not exist. Which slit did the photon go through? Feels like a simple historical question. It already happened. The photon already hit the detector. But if you erased the which path information, that question has no answer. Not because you lost the information, because the universe never contained that information in the first place. The past isn't being changed. It was never fully written. The physicist John Wheeler saw this coming. Back in 1978, decades before the Kim experiment, he proposed thought experiments about delayed choice. What if you could decide after a photon had traveled across a galaxy whether to measure it as a wave or a particle? Wheeler wasn't claiming we could change the past. He was saying something more subtle. Quote, "We are participants in bringing into being not only the near and here, but the far away and long ago." Read that again in your head. We are participants in bringing into being the far away and long ago. This isn't mysticism. Wheeler was one of the greatest physicists of the 20th century. He coined the term black hole. He worked on the Manhattan Project. He was describing what quantum mechanics actually implies. The past isn't a fixed movie reel that played out and stopped. For certain questions, the past remains indefinite until present measurements give it definition. The universe doesn't have a complete history. It has a history that emerges through the act of observation. Participatory, co-created, yours. Let's bring this down from physics. What does this mean for you right now, listening to this? We all carry stories about our pasts. I am the person who experienced X. That event made me who I am. My history is written. But quantum mechanics is whispering something strange. The past might not be as solid as you think. I'm not saying your memories are fake. I'm not saying trauma didn't happen. I'm saying that what those events mean, what story they're part of, that might be more fluid than you realize. Neuroscience already tells us memories are reconstructed every time we recall them. The past you remember today is not the past you remembered 10 years ago. And now physics is hinting that even the fundamental fabric of history requires present observation to become definite. You're not just living in the present. You're participating in creating what the past even is. That's terrifying. Or liberating. Maybe both. So, here's where we are. An experiment that looked like it proved time travel actually proved something weirder. The future doesn't change the past. The past was never as fixed as we assumed. For quantum systems, certain questions about history don't have answers until measurements in the present give them definition. The interference pattern was always there, hidden in the noise. The which path information was always erased. Nothing traveled backward. But the act of sorting, comparing, looking, that's what made the pattern visible. That's what gave the past its shape. Wheeler called it a participatory universe. Not a clockwork that runs whether we watch or not, but a reality that emerges through the act of asking questions. You're not just a witness to history. You're a participant in its creation. The experiment didn't break time. It revealed that time was never whole. Look back at your life. What story have you been telling? And what story could you tell instead? The past is listening.